Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
ABC is reporting that Joe Biden is staking his entire re-election bid on the financial muscle of the DNC. Is that going to work? Let's talk about it today.
Well, I'd like to start with the why. And the why is there's no enthusiasm for the top of the ticket. Where else is the grass tops money going to come from?
You just started the show. Go.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we're going to do another story coming up from the Washington Post about trying to diminish the Republican accomplishments in the midterms by saying it wasn't really Republican enthusiasm. It was low Democrat turn. All elections are about base enthusiasm, and there clearly isn't any for Joe Biden. So I get it. You're going to have to use key Senate races, congressional races, or issues in state to raise money. And we've had an example of that you've intercepted, because there's not a lot of enthusiasm for a Joe Biden that 4 out of 10 Democrats want anybody but.
Yeah, this is a interesting analysis. And I really want to get your mind on this because you've been watching this for a long time. And there's a difference. You know, when Barack Obama came into the presidency, he brought in the whole show. He did everything. I mean, if you go back to the MIT review documents that reviewed his strategies and the actual application of technology in his 2 runs for the presidency, they basically were in the $2 billion zone both times. They spent so much money on tech and social media and the construction of how they built their base. It was amazing. They were their own machine. And after he won the first election, they never fired any of the people. They never let them go. They kept them on payroll the very next day, working for the next 4 years.
So much so that when his 2 terms was over, he took all the hundreds of millions of dollars left over and created the very thing that John Podesta and George Soros are still using.
Well, and so there's all these different players. There's Podesta, there's Soros, there's Obama, there's everything that we learned. And now here comes Joe Biden, and I've never been able yet to get the solid read on Biden. Who's with him? Who's against him? What does he bring in? Was he really the Manchurian candidate because that was good enough and nobody expected him to get this far? You called early in his administration that you said Biden's gone rogue. He's broken out of the Podesta camp. Then shortly after the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the energy pieces and all that monster infrastructure money, Podesta comes back into the White House to write the checks to all the people who are going to get all these funds distributed. So he's sitting in the White House writing checks to his friends and to the allies. So he's sitting in the White House again, is the longest serving man in the presidency in the history of the country.
Goes back to 2 terms of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he goes the whole way back. So do you read this as Biden is out of the camp with Podesta?
Well, we've sensed this a lot. All right, so let's just do a little brief history before I get to never assume that Podesta and Soros have lost control or lost their wisdom. They're always, I assure you, 5 steps ahead of the conservatives and the Republicans.
Now, see, that smokes me because I don't want to believe that. The problem is that experience proves it's true.
But before I get to that, let's just get to the last election. So what did we see? We saw all the Clinton apparatus. What do we mean by that? Their chief strategists, their grass tops money, their grassroots little warriors on the street. The whole apparatus of Hillary Clinton went behind Kamala Harris. Now, the problem was, I'll bet the attraction was, we think we can get race and woman in the White House. I guess that would be attractive to that apparatus. But the problem was she was so unlikable. And she was one of the first out in the 29 sweepstakes of Democratic primary candidates. So there's the Clinton apparatus with a losing candidate. The Obama apparatus reluctantly had to get behind Biden because he was a 2-term vice president for them. I don't think it was enthusiastic, and I don't think there was anybody that really excited them. And I don't think, quite frankly, they thought they'd win.
And the Obama people and the Clinton people are they just don't get along. Right?
No, hate each other. With the exception of Podesta, who has played both sides.
Right. But Podesta represents the money, so he's going to go wherever he wants to go.
So what was interesting was 4th in Iowa for Biden, 7th in New Hampshire for Biden. Kamala so unlikable, so irritating with her giggle in her voice. She's gone. They got nobody. They cut the deal in South Carolina with the Black Caucus. They get the old man who's going to restore civility and just do nothing, that whole thing. But what nobody saw was you just married in one ticket, still in an outsider election, the most insider, the entire Clinton and Obama apparatus, with the Clintons on the bottom of the ticket and the Obamas and Biden at the top. That's recent history people need to remember. All right, so now Joe's a disaster. His policies have failed, and now he's going to face a returning Donald Trump with the disastrous results. And here comes Podesta now, and it looks like it's foolish. It looks like, you've got a guy that can't win. You got a guy that 4 out of 10 on your party want anybody but. There's no enthusiasm to get out and vote for him. And that's what Democrats need, because if enthusiasm is the same on both sides, they always win. There's more of them. They don't have that. You can't attract any of the grass top money because he's been such a dud, and the big grass top money. And so you think, well, Podesta's really lost it, right? No, I think they're going to thread the needle. I think they believe, and we've seen this already. You live in a state, one of the states you live in, Ohio, that is under duress on a special election vote, that they're hoping that they can sneak through and make the whole turnout message in the presidential election a year from now. So I think they're going to attach to issues, attach to Senate races where they can. And I think they believe they can limp by and win with a diminished Biden, finish the 4 years, and then they've got all their play for the next 8 years, which I think is going to be the Maryland governor. And you know what? The worst part about the scenario is, can a non-enthusiastic, cognitively impaired, disastrous in terms of policy results limp and win a re-election? Well, you know as well as I do. When you got Air Force One, you got a huge advantage.
Yeah, I've always said the person with the biggest plane wins the presidency. You can't beat Air Force One. The concept is there is a predisposition in the American voter frame of mind that you don't throw out a president if you don't have to. And so this now is the challenge for the other side, is to create the rationale that we can't go any farther with this guy. Now, I don't know that there's ever been anyone weaker other than Richard Nixon if he had attempted to continue in any way, shape, or form. Of course, he was out. He had his second term, was already reelected.
No, this is Jimmy Carter, but there's no Ronald Reagan.
Okay, wait a minute. You do that to me every now and then.
Ouch.
This is Jimmy Carter, but there's no Ronald.
There's no Ronald Reagan. You've got 30% support in the Republican Party. Now wait a minute. Wait a second. Don't a lot of people think that Trump is going to save them from another term of Biden? But that's only 30% of the Republican Party. The party's still divided. And in that, you still have, all right now, you're sitting in chaos, as you described it, which I would agree. You've got Trump and DeSantis, the two leading candidates. Put them together, they're 80% of the vote. And they're the same lane. I think you're going to get a big surprise, and it's not going to be Ramaswamy, and I don't think it's going to be Mike Pence, and I don't think it's going to be Nikki Haley. I actually think it's going to be Governor Christie, because there's a 70%.
Christie, that's what's going to get the nomination?
No. That will occupy the other lane and do better than people think. But you still have a split party. You still have a very divided party. There's no Ronald Reagan in unity. You know, I've talked to you about this before.
And there's no Bush either. W, the first time, I remember when W came out the first time around, everybody in the world took a plane ride to Texas and bought in. He was without a doubt a consensus candidate.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, but his father, everybody assumed would have a cakewalk of an easy election. And quite frankly, surprisingly, in fact, I think Herbert Walker Bush might be the last person to have an approval rating over 90% in American history. And it was after the first Gulf.
That was in January. Yeah. And he lost
the election. So, but how did that happen?
He looked at his watch during a debate.
That's what a lot of people talk about. But the reality was you had Bill Clinton, who survived all his scandals. Everybody thought he'd be gone like Gary Hart with scandal, but he wasn't, because he was charismatic. And then you had the Ross Perot factor, which I do think John Podesta has that ace under his sleeve to still play. If he's wrong about Sleepy Joe, he's still got an ace under his sleeve. He could always run RFK as an independent and Joe would win. Or even worse, if Trump should lose a nomination, Trump wouldn't be able to resist running as an independent and he'd get Sleepy Joe. He's got a lot of ways to win. Never think Podesta and Soros are sleepwalking. I always assume. In fact, when I'm brainstorming, I go, what am I missing? Because I know they're 5 steps ahead of me. And there's the 5 steps.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
So Podesta sat with Soros in 2003 in Washington, D.C. and founded the Center for National Policy.
With the Obama administration money.
And a lot of George's money. Obama converted his electoral machine from Americans for Obama to Organizing Now and 2 or 3 other different names and Definitive. So they've got all these groups, all these cash pots, all these opportunities. So then why is Hollywood and former Disney execs and other people given Biden boatloads of money? I mean, millions into his super PACs and all that stuff. Have they been clued in on this, do you think? I mean, is the team rallying now because they know it's okay?
What went through my head immediately was when we started sensing that maybe Silicon Valley wasn't on board with old Joe. And that's why we were, you see in the RFK play, the way it was happening. Remember we talked about the cabal table. Well, at the cabal table is the grass tops and grassroots movements of the left, the major networks and mainstream news and print news, and then social media, because that's, quite frankly, you have the social dilemma, and that's them, technocracy. And I have sensed that everybody isn't on board because remember what we always said, Biden is not Jimmy Carter. He's LBJ. The difference is LBJ was smart enough to go because he knew he would lose. Joe's stubborn and won't go. So that's the dilemma they're still kind of in. And I think when you get to that cabal table, everybody isn't on board and you can overread some of those things. But the real play is Biden because they think so little of Trump and DeSantis and they think they can sneak them by and they still have a third candidate play if they need it. That's what I'm sensing.
I was looking at the numbers from 1992, looking back and seeing that George Bush lost Ohio to Clinton by like 90,000 votes. That's a pretty small margin. That means 45,000 votes one way or the other would have turned the election. Ross Perot pulled 1 million votes in Ohio. There you go. There's the answer.
Well, Ross Perot pulled wherever somebody was focused on the economy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the first outsider movement too, wasn't it?
Well, there have been others. I mean, before you go back to John Anderson and others, I mean, there's people that allege that Carter lost the second time around because of third-party candidates. Ralph Nader. There's all kinds of things that have gone on. The third-party play is often forgotten about. Then you look back and go, whoa, where'd that 1 million votes go? Well, there they are. I mean, that's a massive situation, and it only needs to happen.
Do you think history has forgotten about the Ross Perot effect? Because you'll even see the mainstream media talk about that.
Oh, boy, I haven't heard his name or that wonderful impression from Dana Carvey in about 1 million years. No, I really do.
That's convenient.
Yeah, I think we really do forget the power of third parties. So let me try to put this in perspective because I'm trying to figure out the pieces and the parts. So Biden is no longer rogue. He's now okay. He's approved by the club that's going to go ahead and make all the money plays. And he's not going to be in his basement. He'll live inside Air Force One. And he'll come out, he'll wave. They probably won't let him come down the stairs. He might just wave and do a speech from the, from the platform there.
He is physically not up for 4 more years.
Right. But they just need him for one more election.
Right.
But what about Harris? I mean, what do you do with her?
It's interesting. You've got a lot of plays there. You could, first of all, remember the statement of problem is you've got a president who is the incumbent, which gives him an advantage, but he's cognitively and issue-wise impaired. And there's no enthusiasm within your party.
Mm-hmm.
There's not necessarily hatred for him outside of the party.
No, they don't want him to lose. They don't want him, but they don't want him to lose.
Right. So you have a reluctant, unenthusiastic. So if you can attach him to an issue, attach him to a key Senate race, and get the grass tops money or even the ground activists at the grassroots level somewhat enthused about something more than him, that's a play. Another play would be, and I think it's obvious to everyone, you could ditch Kamala and you could add RFK. That's a play. You could run RFK, purposely shun him and run him as a third party because he's shown signs of 20%. There's only 3 people that could have a Ross Perot effect in this election. It's not Ramaswamy. It would have to be Trump, RFK, or DeSantis. DeSantis won't do it because he's fine playing 4 years from now.
Right.
But Trump and RFK are the 2 that could pull a Ross Perot. Trump's would be his ego if he loses the primary, and that's a big if. RFK would be, would he, because he would never run as a Republican, but would he keep running as an independent to keep his messaging and himself positioned over a Maryland governor 4 years from now? These are all things that you've got. I think the 5th ace up your sleeve is drop Kamala and add RFK or add a popular governor like the one. Look, if you add that Maryland governor to that ticket, are you kidding me? He's a cakewalk in 4 years from now. As the vice president, a heartbeat away, running for the nomination, he would be formidable for anyone to beat.
So the premise of what you're saying is, yeah, that's the part of the White House look, but they're moving their money, their involvement, and their investment. This article talked about the fact that suddenly Biden is everybody's friend in the state parties. He's everybody's friend at the bottom. All of a sudden, the people who were basically shut out of the process completely in the Obama years, suddenly Biden cares about them. He cares about what's going on in the states. He cares about what's going on ballot issues. He cares about all this down ticket stuff. And your theory is that he does all that because they'll get the money to the bottom. They'll drive the turnout from the bottom up. And that's how he'll win.
That's their play. And I think
he'll win on every other issue other than him.
And he will pander to LGBTQ. He will pander to the pro-abortions. He will write checks and funnel money towards their state. But you know the dead giveaway? The ABC story. President Joe Biden is staking his re-election bid on the political and financial muscle of the DNC. As it prepares for a bruising 2024 contest, his campaign plans to raise and spend around $2 billion, but it will do so in coordination with the national and state Democratic parties in an effort to establish a coordinated campaign around the country. Does this sound like a news story or a dictation?
Well, yeah.
No, I mean, seriously, that
straight from the desk of John
exactly.
Podesta. Here's
well,
the
you
way
know
the
how
game is going to
you
be
remember
played.
Inauguration Day? Wasn't that laughable? John Podesta's news release, a press release prior to the
at 11 o'clock in the morning.
11 o'clock
right.
in the morning, and then go listen to the inaugural speech and tell me he didn't write both.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, for those that didn't listen to us when we were on the radio, what John Podesta was congratulating announcing the new administrative state, not a presidency, not an administration, the new administrative state headed by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. How interesting.
Okay, so the thing I got to get
and
to.
un-American.
The thing I got to get to with you is I got to know how you actually think they're going to pull this off with Biden in the process of the campaign. Now, I got to go get some more coffee, so just stick with me for a second.
Grab me one, too.
This conversation isn't over yet, so come on back next time and pull up a chair at 1850 Main Street. To help spread the word, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. We'll see you soon.